right, so we'll open up this special meeting of Fire District 4 Board of Commissioners at 13:31 hours.
I'll move, this is Commissioner Flath, I would move that we accept the minutes of our previous meeting as we have received them.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Good afternoon. With time off for good behavior, no icebreakers today. Thank you very much for doing those in such a good spirit. And I think we all pretty much know each other at this point, unless you would like to do another round of introductions. What's your pleasure?
I think we could pass with that.
All righty. We just saved 10 minutes. Today's agenda is mostly about assets, apparatus, equipment. We're going to go through that, and then we'll just have a quick closing confirmation of what our next steps are, which is basically each group deciding separately. We're not going to be trying to make any actions or recommendations as a committee here today about what to do next. That will be a separate decision for both parties. So that's all I've got. We have maybe a thumbs up from the Everett folks for the meeting summary that is behind the minutes. Does that look okay to you folks? Thank you, Council President. Okay, Council. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding there. Good. Well, we'll call that one good. And Chiefs, were there any email communications?
None to Everett Fire.
Okay.
And we had one with one of our residents that I answered because we've been having a email discussion. It was about how the vote would proceed if we got there.
Okay. All right. And then Chief DeMarco, there was a question from the mayor last time about Everett's left one liability. You were going to provide a quick update.
Yeah, the question was, is can we put a better picture on the city of Everett's left one liability for the fire side only? The city has done a previous actuarial study that we could share, but the updated actuarial study is due in May of this year, so next month. So we think that we prefer to just wait and give you the accurate actuarial study. But in terms of just counts, head counts, there's currently 99 left one retirees and 17 widows on the fire side of the city of Everett's responsibility for left one former employees.
Okay.
Thank you. So now, are there any other follow-up questions for Chief DeMarco on left one? Okay. Then let's just go ahead and I'll turn it over to the chiefs for the PowerPoint on assets, apparatus, and equipment.
Hello. I'll be going over this with you and almost all the information you've seen before, and we're just going to take the next level in some of it. Kind of how we would go through capital planning and what you would have to consider for that. We'll start off with equipment, apparatus, and the one note I do want to make is that the fire authorities will be a single issue authority, which is a little bit different than the cities, and they have, as you've seen, much less ability to creatively deal with emergent problems or shift money and resources around, take loans from themselves, change taxing ability. So the real solution to that is having a long-term plan and having a funding that can handle those situations as they come up. So you've seen this before. This is just our general breakdown of the apparatus we have. Again, we're just scaled differently, but very similar. And this is where we're just going to do a dive and kind of show you the two departments' plans for the funding. And you can see 20 and 21 are in red because most likely the RFA will not have formed by then. So that's what Everett and District 4 will have to do on their own. 23 is a maybe, depending on how you model it, but 24 and 25, most likely the RFA planning committee will have to think about how to fund that. And so you can see that District 4 for equipment replacement is planning to spend 3.3 million over that time. And a lot of that chunk in the first couple of years of the RFA. Everett, very similar, $6.6 million over that time. And again, almost $3 million of that in those first 2 years of the RFA. And what's a little bit weird about the fire service is we have a lot of things that normally wouldn't be considered capital, like breathing apparatus, the air pack that we use. They're only $10,000 a piece. The problem is because of training requirements and safety requirements and laws, we have to buy them in chunks. And, you know, so for the new RFA, that'll probably be somewhere between 200 and 250 of those air packs at any one time. And they have a 10-year lifespan by law, basically. You can stretch them out to 15, but at 15, the bottles you can't use anymore. Cardiac monitor, same thing, have about an 8-year lifespan, but again, you don't want to change models. If you're lucky enough that you can buy the same model, you can do 1 or 2 at a time, but models change enough that it's very hard. So this is just kind of an example of various things that normally wouldn't be considered a capital item in a lot of things because of the individual price, but because of the way the fire service works, they do become a large capital item because you're spending $2 million, $3 million to replace them at a time. The next slide. This again just kind of goes through some of the things that in the next 5 years that Fire District 4 has or will be placing, and about $1 million on the table there. Everett, similar, $3.5 million on the table there for large equipment. Facilities, again, one of the major cost items in any organization. The fire service, again, is a little bit different. Our buildings aren't easily remodeled and easily changed. So the lifespan of a building may be X amount, but it is hard to get the safety items, the codes that change. Just for instance, from when I started, we're now supposed to keep our gear in separate rooms. We have exhaust removal systems, all kinds of things that did not exist 20 years ago even, which makes using the stations harder and harder. Again, you've seen this slide before. It's what each agency's facilities are. And I guess we would make a special note that Everett does have the one station that's 50 years old with a 50-year lifespan, so that's coming up at the very beginning of the RFA we'll have to deal with. And again, District 4 plans on replacing all their facilities in the next 5 years, and so about $21 million, $22 million worth of facility changes there. Everett this is where Everett's a little bit, where it's not scalable. They're down at the $3 million range, having just did some of their stations besides that one 50-year-old station that needs to be done. And Dave, you can jump in whenever you want. So life cycles, that's probably one of the biggest issues for the planning committee to look at, because the two agencies, you went back, that's fine.
Sorry, I'm going mouse crazy here.
That's okay. I wasn't keeping, I was like, wow, I don't remember that. The two agencies have some differences in life cycle planning. You can see the difference in the engines, the ambulances, but especially the stations. It's all, we plan almost twice as many stations as Everett. So coming up to a solution on how to do that. And part of the problem is our stations will be designed for that lifestyle. So you can't just change the 30 to 50 because they weren't built to do that. So coming up with how we're going to do that capital will just be one of those decision points for the committee. And again, to go through some of the other decision points, a plan to fund those first couple of years, as you can see, there's a lot of money that has to be spent in those first couple of years in capital. There won't be time for the general tax levy capital plan to kick in those years 1, 2, and 3 probably. So having a plan on how that's going to happen. A lot of the things we can't choose not to buy because of safety requirements or legal requirements. So is that going to be an initial reserve or some other way? That'll be up to the planning committee. Developing that rolling capital replacement plan, is it a 5-year, 7-year, 10-year plan? And then how are you going to fund that plan? Those will all be bigger dives into the capital part of the RFA plan. Kind of a difference in the reserves. And again, the cities just run differently. You have many reserves and many ways to bring money in if there was a catastrophic failure to an apparatus or a building or anything like that, found something was safety wise in the station that had to be replaced. So you won't see as many reserves that are dedicated to the fire department. But with the fire district, we don't have any of those other options, and so we typically have a bigger reserve, a bigger placeholder, not only to replace the capital, but have that buffer. You can also see that we have the 3.2 million in cash carryover. The city has the same thing because you have to wait till your tax comes in April. It's just a general carryover that is for everybody. We have to have our own to operate in those first 4 to 5 months because we are not getting any cash until the first tax revenues come in. So again, that will be something that the RFA has to think about, and not only for that first year, but it has to be a rolling one. We have to have that ending every calendar year with that reserved to make us through the next 4 to 5 months, and an RFA will be the same.
For the Everett contingent, I'll just say that I spent some time on this slide with Susie trying to figure out the best way to present this. And of all the differences between a city and a fire district, this one slide created the most difficulty in coming up with some sort of apples to apples comparison, because the city does have multiple revenue funds, whether they're enterprise funds or the general fund, but those funds are earmarked for very specific things under law, and so it's just profoundly difficult to say that X number of dollars within any given fund represent the fire department's share. It's just very, very different. And so the best we could come up with is that the EMS fund is independent and that it is required to be spent on EMS expenses, and that this year's cash rollover will be $6.5 million. And that the rolling balance in funds 126 and 140, the rolling balance year to year, the fund spends money and then there's a deposit into the account each year, but the rolling balance is roughly $3.5 million. So that was as close as we could come to being able to make a comparison in this way. I'm happy to take questions on that if any of the commissioners or if any of the city members have comments or questions, but this is a really difficult slide to make a comparison with. If not, we'll let Dawn go on.
Then assets, this has come up before, but I roll a couple things into the assets. Not only do we have the stations and equipment, but we have computers and software licenses, facilities, the reserves like we just showed, liabilities like left one, the employees, all that is assets that will have to be determined how we transfer. And I will note that we have to look at how to be fair to all three entities. We often talk about R2, the fire district and the city, but there's the new RFA, and so that has to be strongly taken into account whenever we're doing this. And so we're talking about three entities. And this came up before, and we just have to remember that once Fire District 4 forms the RFA, there really is no Fire District 4 for anything to go back to. So it will give up all assets to the RFA no matter what they are. Another issue you've heard is about the ownership. Basically, you can think of it as Fire District 4 owns 3 of the 4 stations that it operates. The city owns half of 2 stations. That's one whole station, and there's agreements in place to rectify that in multiple ways. And again, we'll just recap the decision points that the board will have to deal with if you choose to go on. Like we just talked about, the asset transfer plan, the life cycle assumptions, the capital funding for years 1 through 5, which I see is a bit different than the long-term funding for the capital plan, the left liability funding if it's moved to the RFA, and any other liabilities and funding for those liabilities. And again, there's a lot of ways to solve this. It will all tie into the financial plan, the funding sources that you choose. All those are different levers that you'll have to pull to get the final plan. Chief or Karen, or questions?
I have no questions. I think that's just nice to see all that data recapped in one place. Thank you, Chiefs. Anyone else have questions or comments on what the chiefs just presented? All righty then. Chief DeMarco, I think the next discussion was I have a short PowerPoint that just flags what the next steps are should you decide to proceed beyond the exploratory phase, which is a decision which will not be made at this table here today. I can show that, or Chief, were you going to run that?
I can run it for you. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Here it comes.
This is pretty straightforward, won't take us terribly long, but
Let me know when you can see it.
I can see it.
We can see it.
All right, so the next slide, please. So this just sort of recaps what we have done together in these first 5 meetings, in addition to meeting each other, although only virtually. Although I understand that Commissioner Schmoker and the mayor were able to meet in person earlier this week, which is great. We talked themes from my initial interviews with you. We looked at the mission statement, a draft charter that could guide our progress and process moving forward. You've been presented with a lot of data about staffing and operations and sources of funding and timelines on needing to replace things. We've looked at a lot of different options for how people have structured their governance. We've looked at the basic options for how to finance one of these RFAs, and we've identified a number of issues that we're going to have to tackle together as a group if we come back together again. And we've also made a point to make sure labor has been at all of these meetings and asked them to share their perspective as we go on what they're hearing. Next slide, please. So this was the mission statement we looked at, where your job, should we come back together again after this exploratory phase, is to develop the RFA plan, which includes all the types of information there that are highlighted, with the note at the end that we are, this committee is advisory to the separate Board of Commissioners for District 4 and for the Mayor and City Council of Everett. Next slide, please. So if we go beyond the exploratory phase, when we work to put together the RFA plan, ultimately that plan is the initial, basically the governing document for the RFA, and it must be approved separately by both the Board of Commissioners of District 4 and the City Council. And as we go forward, if we go forward, I would anticipate an iterative process where you all would make a recommendation together at this table. We would forward that up for review and consideration separately by the Board of Commissioners and the City Council. And they would let us know if they were okay with that recommendation or if they wanted us to try again or aim in a different direction. And then we would incorporate their direction into our work as we proceed. This is intended to avoid any, we work for 7 months and then find out they hate it. We really want to avoid that outcome. And that's what the iterative process is all about. Next slide, please. So if you decide that you would like to continue the discussion, what we will do first is decide when, where, and how often and for how long we'll meet. One of our first steps would be to update and adopt a mission statement and a charter to govern our process and go through that step of electing a chair and a vice chair for the planning committee from amongst its members. And then we would put together a work plan that would talk about the sequencing of events. And as I have mentioned a couple of times, I find that it is successful to sort of try to make progress in all 3 areas rather than do them all sequentially. And we would just, in each case, start at the most general level and move to more specific issues as agreement is reached and recommendations are confirmed. And the boxes below there at the chart at the bottom of the slide show you some of the issues that we might grapple with first in each of these 3 basic areas. Next slide, please. So it probably won't all be roses. There may be some things that we sort of don't, easily come to agreement on, and that's fine. It may take us a while. If we hit an impasse, like at this table, we can't figure out a solution to this that we're happy with. we can agree to just stop the process at any time. And either party, even if we don't both agree that there's an impasse, one side's like, no, this is great, keep going. And there's like, no, it's not great at all. Either party can decide to withdraw at any time if they feel that is really the point at which they are at. Next slide, please. So at this point, we're going to suggest that everybody's going to go off and deliberate separately and then let each other know of whether you would like to proceed beyond the exploratory phase. And I'll work with the chiefs and you all to do offline work to figure out what that schedule might be. And then we'll get back together and work to build a RFA plan that meets both of your needs. And basically that's the drill from here. I think that's my last slide.
Yes.
So very straightforward, but just to reinforce, we're not deciding anything here today, but wanted to just sort of map out where we might be going from here. In my experience, the follow-on discussions will take the better part of a year to work through the issues and give you guys chance, especially for that check back with the council and the Board of Commissioners. It takes some time to get these things done, but it's something that folks do. So that's all I had to say around that one. And unless there are questions or comments on any of that, we can just go straight to the closing roundtable. And if anyone has any comments they want to offer here at this closing exploratory meeting, Commissioner Flath, go ahead.
Yes, your third to the last slide, it talked about deciding when, where, and how often. Do you have timelines from the past, perhaps, where the groups have said, please get back together, let's get back together with our decision in 2 weeks, 3 months, or something like that, just to get started?
You mean, are you looking for trying to recommend when you hear back from each other about your decision?
Right. I think that at least one way or the other, I think that would be an important in this whole process, so we don't just let it kind of slide, and so forth like that.
That's a good point. I imagine that the chiefs have been thinking about this. What is your anticipation on either side at this point?
For Everett, just for everyone's awareness, we have to brief the remaining city council. And I've already had some conversations with the mayor on what she would like that to look like. And so I'd like to defer to the council president if I could. But our intent right now is to make a presentation in the month of May to the full council and hopefully make a decision at that point.
Yeah, that's we'll get that on our agenda as soon as you've got your presentation ready. We'll bring this forward to our council and get some feedback from them and get our pathway moving forward. That's our process.
Cool. So so the fastest it would happen would be like a month. That's
Probably
assuming you
month.
get in and out of one meeting. Is it a high likelihood? It's hard to know whether you might need more than one meeting, but if it turns out you need more than one meeting, we could certainly let District 4 know that you're doing that. Otherwise, it sounds like anticipate about a month on your side, unless advised otherwise.
I think in conversations with the mayor, the hope is to have an answer early in the month of June.
Okay, all right. And on the District 4 side, what's your thought?
I would say similar. We have a meeting on May 10th and June 14th. The May 10th might be too quick of a turnaround to give the commissioners time to get feedback from their constituents. So I would say probably more like the June 14th meeting as a just in case.
Okay. All right. Does that sound okay to folks?
That
Yes.
sounds great.
Okay, good. Any other closing comments you would like to offer? There's committee members or the chiefs?
We have both unions present also.
Yeah. Would you like to go to them first? So let's see, where do we? Whitney and Sebastian.
Yeah, it's Sebastian from Local 46, Everett. I just want to say thanks for including us in this process, and the work you guys have done is really impressive, and we look forward to continue to explore.
Thank you. Whitney?
I would just second what Sebastian said. It's been great to be part of the process, and hopefully we continue to dive deeper into the looking for some solutions.
Thank you. All righty. Anyone else want to offer anything? Okay. Well, I know you all are super busy, so there's no reason to extend it, but and I know District 4 has some stuff they need to do separate from us. So I'll say thank you very much for everybody's engagement, participation, and good questions over this process. It's been a pleasure, and we will look forward to see what decisions come out of the 2 jurisdictions. Thank you very much. And I think now us Everett folks and myself can depart the scene, and we'll let District 4 continue with its meeting.
Yeah, and just a reminder for PIPA to stop recording of the RFA meeting, and then the Everett contingent can depart.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks,
all. Good to
everyone.
see you.
Thank
Be
Yes,
well.
thank you very much. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure working with you, and hope to see you again in June.
Have a good weekend. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Recording has been stopped. Everett stream has ended. I will remove nobody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So moving on to our, let's see. I got to get the right. Well, actually, the only item we had left was the verification or the approval of the lieutenants list,
Yes.
which I had up, but there it is. So Commissioner Plath, Commissioner Merritt, did you have an opportunity to review that list?
Yes, I would move that we accept it, and that the chief can contact the people on it.
Yep, and I second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
No?
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I'd just like to add one thing, that we had 5 people take the test, and we had 5 people pass the test and are on the list.
That's an excellent result.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that, because that has not happened in the past.
I would like to suggest that at our next meeting, or perhaps if we have a commissioner meeting, that we might have some time amongst the 3 of us to discuss this, maybe in executive sessions like we have with some other issues, and that what we've been through and some of where we're at this particular time.
Yeah, I think there may be some legal reasons, some restrictions on what we can discuss in an executive session and in open public session. But I agree we need to talk about this as a board and with the chief and with the labor representatives.
It is on the May 5th agenda, and we can discuss it. Like I said, I think it has to be an open meeting, and that whatever you guys can discuss there, we can put it back on the June meeting or however you want to proceed.
Right, or we could have a special meeting in between.
Yep, exactly.
Well, my concern is that we make sure we, all this stuff is fresh in our minds, that so we don't lose some of our thoughts and things like that and just kind of drift off somewhere.
Right. So 10 days roughly, we'll have our next commissioners meeting. Is that soon enough, or would you like to do something sooner?
I don't know, maybe Evan has a comment on that.
Yeah, I would love, I mean, you say that we do need to do it in an open meeting. There's no way for us to get like a workshop, some sort of meeting.
We can have workshops, we can have special meetings. The legal things around executive sessions are pretty restricted. And so because unless it has to do with specific personnel or legal, lawsuits or things like that, pretty much everything has to be done in open session.
Well, I thought though that when you had things to do with finances and things like that.
Hey, I apologize. We just got dispatched to a call.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You guys can finish the conversation, and someone can just call me and update me with the rest of the conversation.
All right, thanks, Evan.
All right, thank you.
You're excused?
The problem
Yeah,
is,
I just thought that when we had things that dealt with finances and things like that in connection with another entity, that could be something under executive session.
We can look into that, but I think because it's public funds and we're talking about public budgets, our budget is public, unless it's a specific person, I believe, and we can change that. I mean, we can check that,
Right,
but
yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
yeah, I
Okay,
reviewed-
I'm not just talking about us, I'm talking about the Everett folks as well.
yeah, they can't either, Commissioner Flath. I've reviewed the RCW, and I think what you're thinking is like if we were negotiating to buy something from Everett, then we could go into executive session, but we're not negotiating to buy anything. We're negotiating to create a new taxing plan, and so there's nothing, especially the RFA has its own RCW, which is very specific. It has to be all done in public meetings.
Right. Could you excuse me for just 1 second?
Yep.
Right. Well, I was thinking mainly of something anyway that was brought up
I mean,
today.
you can talk to me specifically, and we can talk about whether it's, and I can show you after this meeting, I can show you the RCW requirements for executive session. If
Sure.
we can find it where if it fits legally, we'll do it, but.
Yeah, well, I just don't want to jeopardize any kind of talking relationships with the folks in Everett by something we might say here, and where we should have maybe been doing it in a executive session type thing, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
but I can talk.
that's where I'm at, you know, and I would hope Everett would do the same thing, you know, when it comes to that, if there's any specific things that might be on there, so.
Yeah, since I don't know what you're talking about specifically, I would have to know that to know if it fits in the RCW or not.
Right, yeah, well, I'll show you afterwards, or I'll tell Jim too, what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Oh,
So
there he is.
you can send email or call us.
Well, I was, yeah, okay, but
So
and then,
we can.
I'll talk to the chiefs.
Okay.
Thank you.
As commissioners, since there's 3 of us, so 2 of us can talk, but we can't decide anything. That's the thing. That's the legal restriction, is we cannot make decisions outside of a public meeting.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah. But I'm, yeah, so, I mean, so we can make a decision to close this meeting today, just 2 of us. Or it'll go on forever, and we don't want that. Anyway.
All right. So I appreciate everybody's participation in this, especially Whitney, for putting up with this and being interested in this. With that, we will close our special session at, what time is it? 14:04 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you.